Welcome back to the Poor Sports Podcast. I'm Alex Akita. He's Casey McLean. We're doing another remote today.
Yes.
We've taken this thing on the road quite a bit. And by road, I mean our respective houses.
Yeah, the very opposite of the road. We mean the very opposite of the road.
Yeah, we've been home. A lot of home games.
Yeah, it's we did one at your house last week. I was buying a grill. And then I'll tell the grill story after we do the intro, but I used the grill to my peril.
You did. There's been a lot to talk about with this grill. Last week we shared the story of you purchasing the grill.
Yeah, surviving the purchase.
And though you survived the purchase, it appears you did not survive the setup of the grill, which is that's it's showing your age. I immediately compared it to Kazuhiro Sasaki.
Yes.
And of luggage carrying fame, for those who don't recall the story, but the former Mariners closer once hurt himself carrying luggage upstairs, or at least that was the story that came along with the injury.
Do you have? It sounds like you have skepticism about the legitimacy of that.
No, I believe. Oh, I have skepticism about that injury. Yes, I believe.
Oh
you.
Yeah. It's obvious because for Kazuhiro Sasaki there might be contract implications. He could have been doing something that voided his contract or something like that. For me, there's no contract of any type. And it's incredibly embarrassing. So I guess I'll tell it right now because it's because we keep hinting at it. Is I bought this grill and I was gonna smoke a chuck roast, relatively inexpensive cut of meat. I always try to, like, as I'm learning something, not waste hundreds of dollars on really great cuts of meat.
That's
I haven't used one of these Weber kettle grills in like decades. And so I'm like adjusting it and messing with it, lighting it, finally put the meat on, and I'm kind of trying to adjust the vents to get the temperature right. I squat down to adjust the bottom vent, and on my way back up, my knee pops, and it pops, and I feel something tear.
Oh, no.
I've broken bones before, but not to the degree where you're like, I can see a broken. I've known the bone is broken, but I've not like in the way that we're like this was like such an acute feeling where I was like, I actually thought I must have torn a ligament. And okay, now my dog is barking. So I thought I tore a ligament, and the other thing was I'm in my backyard. We have a picnic table. I go to get up from this squat. My knee pops, big tear feeling. And so I kind of just fall to this bench. And then from there, it hurts incredibly badly, but also I can't straighten my leg.
Yeah.
And I was like,
bad.
I'm like, there's obviously something very, very wrong. And what had happened was, I'll save the histrionics of the whole thing, but I tore my meniscus, and whatever the part that tore flapped into my knee hinge mechanism.
Ooh.
And so basically, as I tried to open my knee, it was like trying to close a door when something's caught in the like between. Yeah, it was like.
See, usually when you hear torn meniscus, that's it's not that bad, especially in sports. Torn meniscuses are you can overcome that pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
But I've heard that if you tear it bad enough, or you tear it in just the right way, it can be incredibly painful. And there's a lot of people, like my friends and I joke that we all think we've torn our meniscuses over time.
Sure.
Like I'm sure my knees are so bad that I know there's something going on in there. I just don't want to pay to have it figured out, and it's not unbearable enough for me to care, right? Like I can just 20 years from now, I might have some regrets, but until then. But I have heard that if you do it bad enough, it requires surgery, and you're going to be very uncomfortable until that happens.
Yeah. So as of right now, the expectation is that I will not require surgery.
Okay.
What
will this do for your athletic career?
Well,
however?
so I will say the feeling of tearing isn't like a direct. I don't have that exact feeling, but the way that my knee popped, I do have that feeling. So it's possible I've had a torn meniscus in the past, because it is a familiar feeling.
Yeah.
The way it sits right now, basically a minimum of no golf for a month, and then in a month my other kid is due, so probably realistically 2 months, which is probably actually good, because they recommend like 4 to 8 weeks of reducing your activity. I'm sure if you're an athlete, they can give you something. They can do something to expedite the process, whether it's pain management or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take it easy. I will say today is the first day that it's actually really started to feel better. Like, it's been bearable. So this is the ironic story of this is, so my wife is 8 months pregnant. She's not supposed to lift anything over 35 pounds, but she's aware of this when she gets home, this injury. And I'm like, babe, I'm so sorry. It's garbage day. I can't bend my leg. I can't crutch. I'm literally like, I was on crutches for like 3 hours basically. And I get home and I took, at one point I ordered lunch because I had not eaten in that day. So it was like 11 a.m. that the injury occurs. I hadn't eaten that day. Finally, we're like on the way home from the hospital and I order a burrito on Grubhub. The burrito gets there. It's a hassle to get it into the house because the choice is either crutches or crawling through my house.
Yeah.
Because I still can't straighten my leg. And then I'm like, well, I don't have any water. I'd like to have at least a water with my meal. Getting a glass of water, I like trying to crutch, hold water, maintain my balance, kind of hop and crutch at the same time. I knocked a picture off the wall. I spilled half the water on the ground. And finally get back. Anyway, so my wife gets home. I've had all this drama throughout the day, and she's, a trooper, and but not thrilled about it. She takes out the garbage. She takes out the recycle. She cooks dinner. She does all this shit that I would normally do at this point in her pregnancy, and it's kind of our dynamic as a relationship. She does all the stuff that I would normally do. We're sitting down to dinner, and I tuck my foot up under my leg to just give it like a little bit of relief because I can't straighten it still, and it's like this kind of partially straightened. It's anything past 90 degrees just hurts like crazy. So I stick it up like under my butt, and I'm eating dinner, and it's like, a little bit of relief as we're eating dinner, and I have it in this position that's somewhat comfortable. And then I'm gonna like move back further on the couch, so I go to straighten my leg a little bit, and it just straightens all the way, pain free. And so from my wife's perspective, it has to look like I was like, I don't want to do my chores today. I don't want to do the shit that I'm doing to contribute to this family. Yeah. And so the moment suddenly her doing all that work was a cure for my knee.
Now you're all better. Yeah. You'll do anything to get out of some chores.
That's right. It was not a cure. My knee is still pretty fucked up, but it's significantly better than it was, which is good. And the fact that there's no surgery at this point, and I actually think also, this is my understanding, my limited understanding of menisci, I feel like should be the plural. I don't think they really heal. I think they just kind of exist in their damaged state, and then you have to decide at some point to get it like repaired.
Yeah.
And so I think even if I was going to get surgery, I'm probably going to wait till long after my second daughter is born because
I don't think it's something you have to almost a lot of the guys I know, I still play some occasional sports, and a lot of torn meniscuses out there that no one has done anything about. And like I said, we'll probably all have arthritic knees when we're in our senior years and regret that we didn't handle these things at the time. But I also knew a guy who once quit in the middle of a softball season to have his meniscus repaired, and everybody made fun of him for it. So I was like, are you really sure you need to do this, man? Like, you're not much of an athlete. I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, I know. I had a buddy that asked me he's like, do you want to play 9 holes? And I'm like, dude, I tore my meniscus like 3 days ago. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you were a pussy. Sorry. And I'm like, I did it. It was bad. Like it wasn't like a tear that's, there's like with COVID, there was like asymptomatic COVID. This was not an asymptomatic tear of my meniscus.
Yeah.
It was like, it hurt very badly. It still hurts. I'm still like icing it every night, and I'm in a brace. I have like a compression sleeve on it. Like now 24 hours of the day. Like it is a thing. It's like a real
like
injury.
Patrick Ewing, but not playing basketball, just doing things, normal things. Yeah, the unfortunate thing about your injury is it's one that people don't have a ton of sympathy for.
Right.
And
and I did it in the most embarrassing way too.
and the way that you did it is not redeeming in any in any way. At least you were doing something you loved.
That's true. He died doing something he loved, and by died we mean he faced his own mortality.
It's like when you hear about somebody who dies from like autoerotic asphyxiation, you're like, well, They're never going to live that down, but at least they were doing something they loved.
At least they got to die before they had to live it down, you know?
They died in the happiest possible way. I'm sure it was the peak of what they were searching for. They reached euphoria.
Have you ever heard that thing that there's like a lot of speculation that a lot of basically, you know how it used to be, you know, this is a serious topic, Alex, that we're going to make light of, but they used to be that suicide was the most dishonorable way to die, and then we found out about autoerotic asphyxiation, and a lot of times people apparently will die from that, and their family's like, can we just say he committed suicide for the love of God, because it's so much less painful.
There's not a lot of awareness out there around autoerotic asphyxiation. No one's taking up a charity or creating a hotline for you to call if you have a problem with that. If you have a problem with that, no one wants to hear about it. That's all you, man.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's I will say I got back on the saddle. I grilled a chuck steak, chuck roast yesterday. My dad, it's tough as you get older and you're an adult because your understanding of your parents changes. Because I was like, my dad just did a bunch of annoying stuff while he was also like saving me, basically. You know what I mean? Like he came to my house and he's like helping me get into his car. He takes me to urgent care in the hospital, and that's all very nice. But I was like, hey, just throw the fucking roast away. Close the vents, just close the vents. I'll deal with the roast later. Don't worry about it. He takes it out of the smoker or the grill and puts it in my fridge, but not like we don't have a fridge we don't have Marie Kondo's fridge, okay? We have a lot of shit in our fridge, and fitting a seasoned and open chuck roast in it is not very convenient. So we just have this like random chuck roast, like dripping blood in our fucking refrigerator because he's trying to do, but also we have a refrigerator in our garage. He could have easily put it in the garage refrigerator, but no, he put it in the one where,
He was doing his best, man.
He was trying. Yeah. I'm very self-conscious now that I can see myself that my hat is like insanely off kilter. But anyway,
I get caught up on I tend to do a little left-hand tilt with my hat, like I'm Fernando Rodney or something, and I'll notice it. Like that's just what feels comfortable to me, right? Sure. Like I don't intend to look like I'm one of the worst closers ever. That's just what happens. And so I'm very conscious of tilting it back to the right anytime I wear a hat, which is pretty much all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, when we do this in person, I don't have to look at myself the whole time, but
that's true.
On this, I do.
We got a lot of things to talk about today. We should probably set up our show here. In a minute, I'll let you promote your upcoming shows, which may be standing, may be sitting. We don't really know how you'll feel that day.
I did do stand up yesterday. I will say that.
Okay, good. We've got some sports journalism news we should talk about. I think we can just roll that into the fold of our topics. I know it was part of our intro, but I think your meniscus story is really the highlight of any intro. So we'll talk about our sports journalism story here. There's a story out of golf. It's not exactly what you think, so we'll touch on that. You might have seen some videos around it. This is like championship week. A bunch of, hockey and basketball have championships this week. So we got to talk about those. There's some combat sports news involving a mascot
and a longtime champion.
And exactly. And of course, the ongoing saga of the Oakland A's, which has another wrinkle to it this week. I was kind of surprised. I almost thought of putting this on here, but I think we might be able to roll this into next week. Have you heard about Zion Williamson?
Oh, yes. I put this list of topics together this morning, and I have heard of the situation with Zion Williamson, but I'm not convinced I understand. I feel like it's a little like the Ja Morant thing where I'm like, I don't really get where the story is. Like, I get that we care about this, but like, what is unless I'm missing something.
No, I don't think you're missing much. The story is basically that he is stringing along multiple porn stars.
Zion likes to fuck.
He has a type, and that type is porn star, apparently. And now they're all finding out about each other, and they're none too happy about it, as it turns out. He's got at least one pregnant. I know that. he's got at least one that's been mad at him on the internet, which is never good.
Sure.
And there's at least one more in there somewhere too. So, but we can talk about that more next week because it is still a developing story. And I would say anybody who's listening to this right now, go investigate that story for us so that next week you're prepared to talk about this in great depth. But before
are we going to have like a Zion Williamson correspondent next week? Is that what you're saying?
We should have a Zion correspondent
live from Memphis or what? Yeah. No, New Orleans. Sorry, Memphis is where old Jaw is.
Yeah, there's a lot of jokes going around about those two, John Morant and Zion Williamson, right now, and rightfully so. I mean, they were the highlights of their own draft class, and now here they are. They're not exactly throwing their careers away, but they're not helping their careers in any way. So
yeah, I do think the NBA is the most forgiving of a sexual controversy of any of the leagues.
Yeah. I mean, this is hardly a sexual controversy too. I mean, this is like Nick Cannon level stuff, and he seems to be doing fine. So the problem is Zion just hasn't been that good on the court. You know, at least John Morant has been a good basketball player when he's not shooting guns.
Yeah. Nick Cannon has been able to impregnate several women and be incredibly anti-Semitic, and we're just like, yeah, how many more shows do you want to host, Nick Cannon?
Yeah, he's a special case for sure. But yes, Zion Williamson, we'll talk a little bit about that next week. Before we get into our topics, though, where are you going to be the next few weeks?
Yeah, so this week I have a lot of shows, and I don't know the venues on all these, but you know, if you live in these cities, it's probably the only comedy show happening in town. On Thursday, I will be in Rockport, Washington, wherever that is, whatever that is. I don't know.
Sounds like the coast. Yeah.
You would think so. I think I did look it up on a map, and it said Skagit County, which I believe is like north of Snohomish County.
Yeah.
But I literally didn't zoom the map out. I just saw Skagit County, and I was like, okay, well, I know I got to drive a long ways for this one.
It's going to suck, yeah.
On Friday, I'm opening for Josh Blue at the Capitol Theater in Olympia. It's going to be close to the largest crowd I've ever performed in front of. Also, if you're not familiar, Josh Blue has cerebral palsy, I believe. Now I feel like a dickhead if that's wrong. Hold on. Let me make my correction if I have to.
He's probably out there telling people you have a torn meniscus, so it's fine.
That's true. That's true. He does have cerebral palsy. Well, that's the funny thing is like I got booked on that show, and then I went and got a limp. Like I'm fucking trying to fit into this. He's like, I mean, first off, it's going to be like almost 800 people. That's very close to the largest crowd I've performed in front of. And tickets are all sold out, so I'm just bragging at this point. And then on Saturday, I will be in Ellensburg at, again, probably the only comedy show in town, I would hope. If we're competing with someone, we're fucked in the city of Ellensburg. And then the big dog. Oh, June 16th also, by the way, is the Bickerson's. The second show at Bickerson's Brewhouse. I will not be there, but my buddy Josh Firestein will be there. My friend Lynette Manning, and then my buddy, I said friend, buddy, and friend, or other way around. Anyways, they mean the same thing to me. These are synonyms. Alex Kaufman is guest hosting, and he's a real funny guy, real dark guy. I was on the poster that I put up, my low effort Instagram poster. I love putting extra effort into making a poster look like shit. I genuinely enjoy that.
Do you use PowerPoint for your posters?
No, this time I just took a screenshot of the Notes app on my computer. Sometimes better. I've used Excel before where I like even insert an image into Excel and then take a screen. I very much enjoy that. But I put on there that two of the comics on that show are parents, and one of them should never be allowed to have children. Alex is the never be allowed to have children person. All right. I just don't think Alexes should be allowed to have children. So this has been a real conflict as a podcast.
Well, the thing you don't know about me is I'm just like Zion Williamson. So,
and then lastly, June 23rd through 25th, I'm at Spokane Comedy Club. 23rd, 24th, opening for Nate Craig. 25th, headlining. That is the aforementioned big dog. By the way, saw the ticket sales numbers. I can't believe it. We are lower than our listener total on. So please come out.
Is there something going on in Spokane that weekend?
Well, it's in Tacoma, so I don't know if Spokane.
Oh, my bad. The Tacoma show. Yeah.
That might be part of the problem is they've been driving to Spokane since I started.
Well, you're covering all parts of Washington in the next couple weeks. I just looked up Rockport. It's 2.5 hours away. And it's up towards the North Cascades. So great. I don't even know if people live up there. You might just be speaking to a forest. I'm
performing for bears.
Yeah.
And not the fun gay kind, like the ones that'll eat me.
And then you're going down south to Olympia, and then you're in the center of the state in Ellensburg, and then all the way out to the east. So, I mean, there's really no excuse.
Wait, why do you have me in? Did I say Spokane at some point?
Yeah, you said Spokane Comedy Club, but you must have meant Tacoma.
New Tacoma. God, I suck so bad.
Yeah,
I've just been. Right. Yeah, I am actually going out. I'm going out to Spokane for my Uncle Bob's funeral that day.
Oh, right.
So I will be out there, but not to do comedy.
Okay.
On the 23rd, I'll be out there. But you're not invited to his funeral. Tickets, it's sold out, it turns out.
That's good. That's good to hear. Biggest audience you could perform for.
Yeah.
In that weekend,
I would bomb in front of that crowd. Okay, yeah, that's it. And then after that, I'm having a kid, so I'm trying to keep the schedule light for at least probably a month, which will probably turn into about 20 days.
Well, you got a lot of stuff coming up. So if people choose not to show up, that's pretty much on you at this point.
Yeah, you're assholes. You are assholes.
All right, we got to talk about the Athletic, man. They went and they've been laying people off left and right. And I don't know how you feel about the Athletic, but when it first came to be, for me, as you know, we've both worked in sports journalism in some capacity in the past. Sure. And the Athletic was exciting because it was really just, it's like the ESPN of writing, right? It was just going to be sports writing. You can subscribe to it at like they always had great promotions, so it never cost that much to subscribe to. Unlike having to pay for like your local newspaper or even like a national newspaper, you know, if you didn't care about other subjects or you were getting your news from Twitter or wherever, some free source, you didn't want to subscribe just to read the sports in those newspapers. And the Athletic gave you another option. So it was cool when it first came out. And now over the past couple of years, they've really started trimming down and getting rid of people. And they just announced this week that they were laying off some more people. And what they're really trying to do is cut back a lot of their local coverages. So, you know, they used to have a lot of regional local coverages. You know, we had a writer that would cover the Mariners, one that would cover the Seahawks, one that would cover the Huskies, all in the Seattle area. And now they're basically just down to like a few NFL beats locally. Sure. And everything else is just national or feature-based writing. So big changes there. And I'm interested to hear what you think about it.
So, well, the other thing they did, by the way, at the beginning that made it exciting as a consumer was they were picking off like great writers, like, and I mean the local guys, but also some of the national guys they got were like world-class journalists. And a guy that I'm friends with that still works there, Eno Saris, is like a guy that I would say, and I in fact, I think he still works there. I don't know. Part of the problem with the Athletic is I signed up for it on an email that I'm not sure even which one it was, and I've paid like $8 a month for years because I can't figure out which one it is to cancel it. I just get billed. I don't even get an email that says like thank you for being a subscriber anywhere.
Yeah, no one cares. They don't care about their subscribers.
They just want that $8 to come out of my account, and it's tied to like an auto pay. So I will say like I've been a subscriber to The Athletic on purpose for about a year and on accident for about 2 years, and I've read very few articles on The Athletic. That's the honest truth.
I think that's been because that's the same for me. I subscribed pretty early on, and I just found I wasn't reading it very often. Right. You know, every now and then they'd come out with something that was pretty interesting. But usually those were like the national feature pieces that were like something you would have read back in Sports Illustrated back in the day, you know, which, you know, Sports Illustrated itself has gone downhill so far that it's nothing like it used to be. And so if you liked that type of writing, those kind of like long form feature pieces, The Athletic was a really good place to go get that type of story. But for like local coverage and stuff, you're right. I mean, early on they picked off a lot of good writers around the country, good reporters, good journalists, and they really paid them well. I know, you know, I had some friends that were being actively recruited by the Athletic when it first came to be, and they had a lot to weigh. I mean, they were going to be paid more going there than they would have in their current roles. But a lot of them were just worried about the security of a company that seemed at the time like it was kind of fly by night. And I always thought, like, having worked in tech and software for most of my adult life, that the people behind the Athletic were software venture capitalists. So they're just in it to, like, their MO is to come in, buy a software company, inflate its value, and sell it off. That's what they typically do. And so the Athletic was like, this was a whole new venture for them in some ways. But if you kind of followed their path or what they were typically used to doing, they were probably going to come in, take this thing over, build it up as much as they could, and then sell it off, which is exactly what they did.
Sure.
It's just, it always comes at the expense of the employees that they've had there since the beginning. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. All these people that went over there and started writing for them and got paid very well to be there have now, a lot of them have lost their jobs. And I think, part of the reason they pay you so well up front is because they know they have to take you away from the security of wherever you're at, whether you're at a newspaper or some other competing online publication, whatever it might be. They can offer you more money, but what they cannot offer you typically is that long-term security.
Yeah, and I kind of like, so does this kind of spell the death of the Athletic? And I'll say real quick, like, people are very often, and this is like a tech term, but they're trying to, like, disrupt sports journalism, right? Many years ago,
that's what the Athletic, like, positioned itself as when they came to be.
But they weren't the first. Like, Bleacher Report many years ago was kind of like that, and Bleacher Report had a bunch of iterations too, and it also sold. I actually was the early stages of Bleacher Report when it was like all citizen journalism. Basically, there was like very few paid writers. Yeah. I was a guy making little to no money as a featured columnist for the Seahawks and the Mariners, which and little to no money, not in the way that like a low-level journalism employee makes little to no money. I mean, literally little to no money.
Yeah,
maybe like 50
I was part of that too. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I was actually offered one of those initial roles when they started paying people, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to do." You're gonna pay me like nothing to do more writing than I already do. Like that seems silly.
Yeah, and you probably I had a negotiation with the Soto Mojo folks. Are you familiar with that?
I remember that. Yeah, I don't know if they still exist, but they were a bunch of kids, weren't they?
Well, at some point they got bought by Fansided, which was like one of these companies that's like, again, it's like they're trying to do a thing, they're trying to reinvent sports journalism. But I by the way, I would happily omit the details except for Soto Mojo. Like sometime later, unrelated, they like I said something, like made a joke about the Mariners on or maybe even just opined on something, and they like attempted to like call me out as an account and then blocked me. They were like, "Oh no, like you won't respond," after they blocked me. Like I got burner accounts, fucking Soto Mojo. So I was in negotiations. They were like, I interviewed for this job. I like took time out of my day to interview for this job as the editor in chief of Soto Mojo. And I'm like, you know what? I can't imagine if there's like a real salary with this. Like, it's a job that I want. I really didn't like my job at the time. And they were like, some of our highest paid editors, they make as much as like 60 to 100. And I'm like, oh, $1,000 a year? And they're like, no, dollars a month, $60 to $100 a month. And I was like, oh no, this is crazy. And it was literally like, write 30 articles a month, 30 columns, whatever, like blog posts a month, and like one a day, whatever the amount of days are in that month. You're like $2 per blog post.
Yeah, there's still a lot of sites that kind of follow that model, and no offense to the people that write for them, a little offense.
Sure. But I mean, I feel bad for you, not like
right. There's a the new Sports Illustrated model. They bought a bunch of sites last year where they kind of started doing that. And what they're basically giving you is they're giving you a big conglomerate name that gets you access to these teams to some degree. So you see like this uptick in people that probably have no business being credentialed for access to these teams, getting access to go and write things that basically become clickbait and are they're not really they're not well written often. They're not there's not a lot of like journalistic ethos behind the articles and how they've been edited and written up, and they get this access and they make very little money to do it, but they see it as a way to get their foot in the door. And I don't think we've seen enough people actually blossom out of that method for it to work. So yeah,
it's kind of in comedy. I would compare it to like the guys, whatever, men and women, but it's going to be a negative thing. So that get huge on YouTube or TikTok. And some of them even were comics, but a lot of times they were not. And then they decide, well, like the way to make money off of this is to try to take this. And like when they get to the live show, when you need the real thing, when you have to have it,
yeah,
they're not comics. Like they disappoint the crowd. And so that's these kind of folks that like come up in this like free blogging space, I suspect have like a hard time maybe doing a professional interview in a locker room or something like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I hear about a lot of these people from people who have been journalists. And that's not to say that the people who have been journalists are right or are better in any way. It's just there is some semblance of professionalism that comes with any job. And a lot of times when you're basically a blogger that gets access, it can be tough to fit in to that level of professionalism, especially if that's your only job. If you're using this as the only way to make money, I understand why you would have a ton of insecurity about your work and constantly be hustling, because I know how much you make and it's not good. And to try and and that's really just like, that's kind of the machine that a lot of these companies have created. The difference with The Athletic, I think, and what made them so appealing is that they weren't going that route that most conglomerations do, where they kind of take the cheap way out, where they're hiring people who are willing to accept almost no money to write and work basically for free, even if the writing is crap. They're just turning, what like the Bleacher Reports of the world were saying, hey, we're going to take your writing, whatever it is, put a great headline on it and make it clickable, and we're going to pump it everywhere, and people are going to click this, you're going to get clicks, and you'll get paid off those clicks. The Athletic was like, we're not going to do that. We're going to go hire legitimate journalists, legitimate writers, pay them more than they've ever made in their life, and make this like the premier destination for any writer who wants to talk about sports. And that's what they did the first few years. And I think, in having conversations with the people I knew who had even thought about going over there, the fears were all the same. The fears were all like, hey, this might die out in 2 years and I'll be back looking for another job, and I don't necessarily want to do that.
And potentially will have burned a bridge at a place where they had a job.
Or on the other hand, they were like, I'm fine doing that. Like, I can rebound from this, and I'm going to make so much money in those 2 years that this thing is going, that it'll be all worth it in the end, even if I lose that opportunity. The thing that's really tough about what The Athletic has been doing, and the really unfortunate thing, is like, because they kind of have run The Athletic like you would run a software company, I understand what they were doing. The guys behind this were just trying to make as much money as they could for themselves. That's the intention of any venture capitalist usually.
Sure.
But the thing that sucks for the writers who have been losing their job, even though they got paid, say 30% more than they were making prior to working at The Athletic, after losing their job, unlike in software, if you and I have worked in software, there's plenty of opportunity to go get another job in software doing the same thing you did before, basically, if you lose your job at one software company.
Right.
With journalism, the opportunities are very slim. And this is another thing that was like beneficial about The Athletic, is just like you were talking about with comedy a couple of weeks ago, and just one new comedy club opening in Tacoma creates that much more opportunity for everybody. The Athletic created that much more opportunity for anybody who wanted to write about sports and was actually good at it. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, it even created opportunity for people who were bad at it, because you saw like the rise in like the Bleacher Report model as it applied to like Sports Illustrated and some of these other companies. And now that they've started cutting back jobs, you're sending all these people back onto the market to try and fight for newspaper jobs that hardly exist because they were put out of business by The Athletic. It's kind of like this vicious cycle that occurred that's hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, do you ever feel like you're like, because at some point these places are hiring people, like they go through like ebbs and flows, but we never really hear about like the newspapers hiring 300 people. We always hear about the layoffs, right? And it almost feels like, how could there even possibly be people left to lay off? Because the industry has just been shrinking so much, and it sucks. It's like, but I also don't know, like, I don't know what the the answer is because it's like, I guess what it is we need individual entrepreneurial people. Like in Tacoma where we live, there was a lady who actually passed away somewhat recently in the COVID years, but her name was Sue Kidd, or that was actually her pen name. She was a food reviewer, like a restaurant reviewer,
Yeah,
and she
worked
worked
one of the best.
Yeah, and she worked for the News Tribune, and at some point, and I don't know the exact details, but she stopped working for the News Tribune. But she had this very local, it was called Dine Pierce County, and it was like basically, it was exactly what she was doing at the News Tribune, but done by her. Like the exact same work, but done by her and put out for a specific audience. And maybe that's the answer, but it's like, I feel like, because you and I both have done a lot of blogging in the past, I feel like I've never seen anyone really do that well. Maybe the closest we've seen is like the USS Mariner guys had a specific niche, but there's never been someone that gets the access, that goes and like really becomes like a reporter the way that we want. Like I want the stories from in the locker room. I want the interviews. I want all the shit without compromising the quality of the product. We've never seen someone, I don't think, go and become like a local beat writer.
Yeah, I think one of the newer opportunities for a lot of these guys is through Substack. So it's basically just Patreon for writing. And Substack seems to work for a lot of people. There's a lot of opportunity to make money there if you're a good writer. I think it works for the people that already had a built-in audience, that were covering something that's underserved, whether it's like a local beat or something like that, and that hasn't really been replaced by other coverage. That seems to be a good opportunity for a lot of people who have been put out of work by these sorts of layoffs. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough space to navigate, because I know like newspapers and stuff, they're really trying to hire people that will accept below, like very low wages, right? Like even for positions that once were considered prestigious and coveted, they're hiring people at numbers that fall well below like the cost of living, especially in places like Seattle.
Sure.
And what they're basically, journalism has always done this. They're promising you access and the opportunity to move up for almost no pay. It's almost like an internship in some ways, but it is a real job. And what that's doing is it's just lowering the quality of all written media, whether it's sports or otherwise. And that's scary, because then you don't have the opportunity to investigate big stories that really kind of tell the truth about what's going on in the world around us. The stories that have become more compelling, that have driven viewers or driven readers and really like move the needle, are often just like sensationalism. They're not real stories anymore. They're not investigations. And, even whether it applies to sports or otherwise, like you need those people telling these truths to be able to make journalism worthwhile. And that's where things have like really come down. And I think a lot of it is because like the Bleacher Report model, the Sports Illustrated model that they're following now, where you get anybody who basically wants to work for free, and you promise them like access and fame. And I can tell you for a fact, like there's no such thing as fame with writing, especially if you like, I don't know what especially dudes like that are in their 20s or teens and 20s, like for whatever reason they think if I write about sports, I'm gonna like get laid every day. No, that's never gonna happen. That's never gonna happen. You might get laid for other reasons. It's not because of your writing.
To be fair, I do think that you have a child and that person was aware of your writing at some point.
That's true, but
or you don't have a child that's coming.
That's all these good lucks. That has nothing to do. Has nothing to do with I don't know. I totally get it. I mean, there's so many people. You always see it on social media. Any journalist with access can post something, and there will always be somebody that says, "I would do your job for free." And there's no way you would do it for free. It's just like with comedy. You're gonna have to hustle a little bit in the beginning. Sure. You're not gonna hustle like that forever.
There's also bullshit that you don't think about. Like with comedy, you just see somebody getting laughs on stage. First off, getting laughs is very difficult, especially at the beginning. But also, you don't see the thing where it's like, I drive 3 hours to do 25 minutes on this show. to barely make enough money to technically cover the gas to like, but from the tax man's perspective, I probably actually lost money. Luckily I have a Prius, so my fuel costs are pretty low. But like also you don't see 1 a.m. when I get home, can't sleep for another hour, fall asleep at 2 a.m. and wake up at 5:30 with my wife to get at her, like there's a lot of shit that you wouldn't do. Of course, if you could just pop in one day and hang out with an athlete, you would do that part. But would you do the part where you're filing a story at 1 a.m. because there was an extra innings game, and the next morning your kid has a baseball game, so you're up 4 hours after you get home or something like that? There's always shit with any job, and especially jobs that are sought after. That's like the journalism jobs. I've always heard of it called like the baseball tax, where like if you're going to work in professional baseball, whatever job you take, you're basically going to take a 20% haircut on what the like open market salary is for that. Beer is very similar. Like these things that people want to be involved with, there's so many people that want to be involved with them that you get fucked on the entry level job, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's like another area where just social media in general has made things very interesting for people, is like whether you want to be a writer or you want to be an actor or you want to be a comedian. It's like if you have any, like even just a tiny iota of success in like you have like one reel that goes viral or one Twitter post that goes viral or something that you wrote becomes popular, it's like there's like this feeling that compels you to like pursue that wholly, and it's like that might not be a good idea. Sure. I can tell you from experience, like having worked for a newspaper, you don't get paid that much. You often feel like you're being promised things that will never come to fruition, and a lot of these types, like especially in journalism, it's an old school industry, man. Like I know a lot of them have worked to get better about like diversity and inclusion, probably to a fault. That's, some people would probably think it's to a fault.
Sure.
But it's just, you have a lot of people that do things in an old school manner, still calling the shots.
Yeah.
And so as a result, there's just not a lot of care into the work environment. And because of that, like they're going to try to get as much out of you as they can for as low, salary wise, as little as possible.
Yeah. Well, and especially so like I said, there's 50 people that want your job. If you're a sports journalist, there's 50 people that want to take that job, that though they wouldn't do it for free, that may be qualified and know that they will do it for 40 grand a year or whatever the salary is. And that might even be a dream for some of those jobs, 40 grand a year.
Yeah. And then, in fairness to those companies, to the newspapers, to whomever, there's not a lot of money being made in those industries right now either. I mean, the companies at the top are doing really well, but that's not your local newspaper. Your local newspaper is probably struggling. And so to ask, for wages that basically meet the cost of living in a lot of places, that's hard to do. It's just tough to do right now.
Yeah.
So I get it, man. It's a tough, it's kind of like being a dancer at a really nice gentleman's club. Usually you have to pay to actually dance there because you collect so much in tips. Did you know that they're not earning a salary after taking off their clothes?
I guess I've known that for long enough that I thought it was somewhat common knowledge. I haven't been to a strip club in like a decade or something, like actually longer than that, because I know I was gonna go to one on my bachelor party, and I lost I had like an iPhone 10 or something, whatever the iPhone at the time was. Yeah. And I had just bought it, and you're like about to get married. We're out of money. We're like tapped out, and we're about to go to New York also for our honeymoon. And I'm like, I need this fucking phone because I don't know how to navigate New York without. I know that like the subway's just whatever. So the whole time when people were at the strip club, I was searching for my phone, which is like my wife's greatest relief, I think. But I did know that. I did know that they have to pay. It's kind of like it's kind of like being a barber also, like in that you like rent a chair at a barber shop. If you know, that's a less perverted example, you fucking heathen. But yeah, I've never assumed that they had like benefits and a 401k at a strip club.
Yeah. Maybe they do. Imagine you could disrupt the industry if you did that. We're going to pay all of our dancers a living wage, great benefits, paid time off.
They got to punch a
really
clock.
good
They wear a hard hat and Timberlands or something like
insurance.
that.
Free lunches on Fridays.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we
gotta
talk about the Oakland A's actually? Because I have there's
Okay.
a similar thing with this to me. So the Oakland A's there's like some controversy or some conversation about whether or not they're going to move to Las Vegas, and the fans staged, I think, a unique protest, which was a reverse boycott, which I've never heard of before this, by the way. Have you ever heard of a reverse boycott?
No. In fact, when I first read about it, I was like, this doesn't make any sense because you're still giving money to the owner of the team. But they basically went there with the intention of just bashing the hell out of this guy.
Yes. And so they did that. And it was very well organized. There was like 30,000 people there, I believe.
It was. There was a lot of signs. There was a lot of negativity towards the ownership group and the franchise. Not the franchise as a whole, but like the entities that run the franchise, which I totally understand. They kind of operated on the theory that they can't stop everybody, right? Like if one person brings a very negative sign to a Mariners game, they're probably going to get that taken away. But if everybody brings a really negative sign to the Mariners game, there's no way those 75-year-old ushers are going to be able to go and be the foot soldiers for the organization and take all those signs away. There's no possible way.
Yeah, and they also started a sell the team chant and all that. And so there's a part of this that I'm sympathetic to. You, I assume, are also. Anyone that was a Sonics fan is going to be a little bit sensitive and sympathetic to a fan base on the verge of losing a team. And I don't want any individual. I'm not like happy that they're on the verge of losing their team. I would like to offer one bit of criticism of the reverse boycott, which is if they were putting this many seats or asses in seats the whole time, the team might not be in this situation. And that was a common false criticism of the Sonics fan base, was that they didn't fill the seats. And
yeah, I waffle on this one a lot because I definitely hear what you're saying. I mean, the A's have had like record low attendance numbers the past couple seasons. Their team has been bad, but they've also operated for years on, the Moneyball strategy of not wanting to pay anybody and trying to get the most out of like the lowest payroll in baseball, which in many years has worked very well.
Right.
But yeah, the attendance numbers have really shrunk down in these last couple seasons. And the one thing that I will say about those numbers and kind of the criticism around the Sonics back in the day as well is the organization goes out of their way to make things miserable for fans when they want to move. That's exactly what happened in Seattle. It didn't happen until the Oklahoma City ownership group came in and took over that last season. And I just remember going to a game that last season and the entire thing, it looked like the team had been sponsored by T-Mobile. The entire thing was just an ad. It was like the Sonics didn't even exist. It was like, here's Team T-Mobile basically. And they did little things like they closed down concession stands. They made it hard just to go in and like get a drink or get some food while you're at the game. I remember they cut out like a normal pizza sponsor for DiGiorno. I don't know if you remember that, but the official pizza sponsor of the last season of the Sonics was DiGiorno. They got rid of like all the main pizzas you'd expect, and they're like, here's some oven baked pizza for you. So I would have to imagine that things in Oakland are bad because the ownership group has made it that way for them too.
Yeah, I believe that, and so I'm gonna read you this article because I was looking this up today. I'm just gonna read you the headline. Notebook. So this is February 1st, 2004, written by Jada Evans. Notebook, which is I think like a like a segment or a common column in the Seattle Times at the time. Sonics low attendance hurting value of team. This is 2004. This is obviously before they get into the years. But this is my problem with this assertion always has been. So this is 2004 that's on the screen right now, and it's always just infuriating to see the Sonics years of the Thunder be called the Thunder. But they sold 91% of the seats. And this is like pretty common as you go through these years leading up to the sale, is that like in 2005, they sell 96% of the seats, which is seventh best in basketball. Some of these teams don't have I I think a capacity for the ratio. They were always selling a lot of seats. They just didn't have a very big arena. And this was a disadvantage that they had. And it was a disadvantage that was, by the way, like Howard Schultz's gripe with the city not supporting the expansion, renovation of Key Arena or the building of a new arena, whatever. And there's probably, I could be fucking up small details of this, but this was the frustration. And so my thing is a thing that some people did, specifically, I remember Bomani Jones doing it, but he was far from the only one, it was like an attempt to provoke the Sonics fan base by saying like, oh, you lost the team because you didn't support them. And that just simply wasn't true in Seattle. And I do think, like, if we look back, I'm gonna pull up the A's again real quick. What I think the Sonics did very obviously is they did this like full scale rebuild at a time when they could. It was convenient also that they could say, well, the fans aren't supporting us, so we got to move to Oklahoma City. Yeah. But yeah, they tore the team down to the studs, except for they drafted Kevin Durant, and they ended up having I remember those years being like just pissed that they were gonna, because I loved everything Sam Presti was doing, but I'm like a guy who is always. I always love rebuilds and player development and shit like that, and I know that's not what most fans want. The thing about the Sonics and the thing that the A's have been good through stretches, and they are still consistently one of the worst attended teams in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, their stadium sucks. I mean, it really sucks.
Sure.
It's kind of a hellhole, and in these types of situations, I always feel like both sides have a little bit of claim to being right. Fans certainly have a gripe. I mean, I thought the reverse boycott was a cool thing to do, but they still didn't sell out the place last night. I remember the last game the Sonics had in Key Arena, they still sold out the place, and it's unfair to compare the two situations. A baseball stadium is much larger than a basketball arena, obviously, but either way, the people who are getting screwed in both situations are the fans. And it's really hard to know, like when an owner decides that they want to move a team, that could be years in the making. The A's owner could have decided many, many years ago that they wanted to move the team at some point in time. And that's when you kind of start the teardown. And it can be a very slow burn for that sort of thing. The Sonics were unique because it was so obvious. I mean, you had an ownership group from out of town buy the team, take it over in Seattle for 1 year, and then relocate it, right? So that one was pretty obvious. But when you have a baked-in ownership group that's there, it's really hard to know their intentions if they decide they want to do something like this. And
well, and also they like, unfortunately, the way professional sports work now is they have to kind of play this leverage game and say like, well, we could move because that's like the only real alternative if the city never puts up money for the stadium.
Yeah. It's I would say like the last 25 to 30 years have gotten really difficult navigating the space between like funding for stadiums, basically. Mm-hmm. And even whether you're a baseball fan or not, you're paying for T-Mobile Park in Seattle or Safeco Field, previously, but you're paying for that because we decided to put up public funding for it. And I understand why people who have no interest in a sport wouldn't want to pay for those sorts of things out of their taxes. And especially in cities where you have a lot of other things to do, like the Bay Area, maybe not Oakland proper, but like the Bay Area as a whole, there's a lot of other things to do. There's another baseball team that's close by in the Giants, right? So it's like you have a lot of competing interest for getting people to come out to your games. And in Seattle, it's the same thing. I mean, there's so many other things you can possibly do here that it could, if we have to go through a negotiation like that with one of the teams that we have now, again, it could be really difficult to get that funding. And there's always some other city out there that is willing to push some bill through to pay for a stadium. The thing about the A's is I think everybody kind of thought like, okay, if they go to Las Vegas, that's going to be a shoo-in. People in Las Vegas are used to building, taking on anything and building these things all the time. But what typically happens in Vegas is, all the building that they do, all the construction that they do, all the teardowns of these resorts and buildup of new resorts, that's all privately paid for. No one's paying.
Sure.
None of the taxpayers are paying for that. And now I think what I kind of hope happens in this entire saga is that Las Vegas doesn't push through their fund, or Nevada, the state of Nevada doesn't push through the funding for this stadium, and the A's just get caught in limbo where they have nowhere to really go, and they kind of get stuck in Oakland because they all along this Las Vegas thing has been pitched as like a done deal, and it's far from that. It's far from that. Like no one's lined up the funding for that stadium yet. They just keep striking these land deals with whoever owns the land in Vegas, and saying, okay, that's the report is like it's done now. They're going to move. There's still a chance for the A's to be saved. The difficult thing is, like, if they do get caught in limbo, it doesn't seem like Oakland's willing to build them a new ballpark, and why would you if they're constantly on the verge of trying to walk out of town? So it's gonna be tough for A's fans no matter what happens.
Yeah, it's kind of so this saga, by the way, has been playing out for a long time. That stadium's been in bad shape for a very long time. And it's the other thing about this is it's kind of like a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the Padres TV deal, and it was like we kind of always knew there was going to be at some point a team that had this experience because the landscape of TV is changing, the landscape of live sports on TV is changing. Obviously, there's less cable subscribers. Our access to live programming we have so many options now. We always kind of knew it was going to shift at some point, and this kind of feels like even though this feels like it's 15 years in the making, they've been talking about moving the A's to a different part of California for a long time. Yeah. Like this has been an ongoing struggle. This isn't like, this is why I am sympathetic to the fans as a Sonics fan, but the Sonics situation is somewhat different. I guess the difference is they don't have a dickhead owner that has sold them off to someone who very obviously wants to move them. Yet.
Yeah. The Sonics it was so unique in the way, in the way it was handled that it's hard to compare that to any other situation where teams move.
But the thing, like Oakland, I guess there's not really an option where it's like the Braves a couple years ago had a relatively new stadium and got funding for another new stadium. This isn't that. This is a stadium that's dilapidated. It's been below like typical MLB standards for decades, and it's really probably not viable for the team to remain there, and it might not be viable for the city to keep the team there. And that, like, it's limbo, but it's kind of limbo for everybody, right? Because even if the A's move, then the city has this enormous venue with nothing going on in it. Like I would have to imagine they would just tear down the Coliseum. It's in terrible shape. They could easily make it, I don't know, parking or whatever. There's so much space that could be used there. Sure.
And I'm sure that, like, at this point, that's probably not a terrible option for them. If you're the city, you're like, we just want to get out of this situation. It's the fans. And the unfortunate thing for fans is that you really have no power other than doing like what the A's fans did the other night and do a reverse boycott or something like that. Or try to make yourselves heard.
They put 30,000 people in that stadium. They haven't averaged 30,000 people since 1991. It's impressive that they did that. It's like cool to see fans fighting back in these situations, whether you're a fan of a team that's moved or not. I think we talked about how it's difficult to identify with the players sometimes instead of the team in like negotiations. Yeah. This is not that. This is fans and fans. Like we are fans of sports teams. These are fans of sports teams finding a way to fight back and also embarrass the shit out of the ownership group.
Yeah.
And that is, I understand how that's gratifying, but I also think is this what is I don't even know what is an outcome for this that makes anybody happy. Like, what's an outcome of this that can make anybody happy besides it feels like just a situation that's like we're beyond the point where, maybe it's not Vegas, maybe it's Portland or something like that. It ends up being, but that's like probably years down the road. The Vegas thing felt like it was somewhat imminent.
I think the thing that's really tough for California teams is, many, many years ago, long before we were born, there was like this exodus of teams from the East Coast over to California and the West Coast, right? So that's why you have all these sports teams that have ended up in California over the years.
Right.
And that, over time, that's not sustainable. It's just not. When you have that many teams in close concentration to one another, the geography of that, it just doesn't make sense.
Well,
and
that's another thing too. That is like why I feel somewhat less bad is because like I mean I guess the Portland Trailblazers were close to us, but there's geographically we're so isolated up here that to go see an NBA game now we have to drive 3 hours.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for A's fans is that in addition to all this other stuff happening, like the Warriors got really good, the Giants got really good and won a few World Series, the Niners got really good. So all the other teams in their general vicinity got really good and started commanding those dollars. Like the A's fans that aren't showing up to games, they're probably spending their money elsewhere, whether it's on one of these other teams or sports or whatever.
Sure.
And that's that's a reality that everybody faces as fans. Like, I'm a huge fan of the Seahawks, but I'm mostly watching games on TV, right? So it's like, if they were to decide to up and move, like, I can look in the mirror and say, well, I guess I didn't do enough. And that would be the reality of the situation. And that's kind of the case for all fan bases.
But do you think this isn't like, so if you put an extra like 10,000 people in that stadium every day, is that enough to make the payroll 200 million? Probably not, right?
No, I mean, yeah. And they probably don't have the money to pay for their own stadium. I mean, that's the thing about just sports ownership in general. And like we were talking about last week with John Stanton and the Mariners, it's like not all owners are created equal. And I think that's one thing, like, fans often think like, well, the Yankees are spending money, so why can't we? And it's like, well, the people that own the Yankees have a lot more money to spend. That's just the reality. It's not every billionaire out there isn't the same. And granted, I mean, you could argue that they should be doing more at times with the money that they have, but again, people aren't all built the same way. To give them maybe more credit than they deserve, they're just not. Some people are more frugal than others, right?
Yeah.
And this is a really tough situation because, like, I know how I would feel if one of my teams left. I do know because I've experienced it with the Sonics, right? And it feels terrible. But the difference with Oakland fans is that you have another team right there. Like, okay. Yeah. If I'm a fan of the Sonics, but if we had like the Bellevue whatever, right down the road from the Seattle Supersonics, I think I could adjust and become a fan of the Bellevue whatevers if the Sonics had departed town. And I know that's asking a lot of A's fans because over the years they've had a little bit of a rivalry with the Giants. But the fact is, if you want to see baseball in that town, you can still go do it.
So you have no sympathy for them. That's what I get. No, I'm with you. I do think it's a situation where, like, I do have sympathy for them, but I don't think they deserve the same sympathy that Sonics fans deserve because they have many more options. I have not been a defector to the Portland Trailblazers because of the rivalries. So I would say, like, I do think it's somewhat unrealistic to expect people to make that adjustment. However, if you decide you like even if, let's say I decided I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan, which I tried to do for a year, it's still 3 hours to go see them play in Portland. You know what I mean? Like and that's, maybe one game a year if I have that available, like that day available. It's just more difficult in my opinion and one thing I'll say to counter your point on the California thing is, like, state borders are somewhat arbitrary. The Bay Area is the Bay Area. That's a smaller region of California. California is enormous and has a population to support a lot of sports franchises. The fact that it happens to be within the border of this fake thing we call California doesn't really matter because the teams that are in LA are geographically further away. Well, that might not even be true, but they're probably further away than Portland is. I haven't driven from San Francisco to LA ever, but I assume it's further than Seattle to Portland.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's you're right. I mean, whether geography applies or not, if you're a fan of a team, you're a fan of a team. And if you lose that team, that's always going to suck. It's just gonna suck. Like after the Sonics left, it coincided with me being at UW, so it was very easy for me to be like a Husky basketball fan. And it happened
Right.
that they were good at the same time, but it's still it's a different style of game. It's not the same team. It's not the same experience.
Sure.
There's just a lot that comes along with years of being a fan of a certain team, and then to just up and lose that is there's nothing that replaces that. It's the unfortunate reality of the capitalistic nature of sports. Like if I'm an owner and I feel like I can't make money because my venue is falling apart and I don't have the money to pay for a new venue, or I do have the money but I don't want to like deplete myself that bad to pay for it, or I'm an asshole and I'm used to other people paying for my venues, then that's the route I'm going to go, right? Like,
Well, it's not even just that you're used to other people doing it. It's that there's other people dying to do it. Like there's potentially cities that are Virginia Beach, probably not Portland at this point. And I think there was a thing about Portland many years ago. I have a suspicion that the city of Portland has shifted in a way that they would not, has shifted politically in a way that they would not support building a baseball stadium to bring a baseball team there. But there are places that want to bring you there. You know what I mean? Like it's not just like this is what I'm used to. This is how it is for every other city.
There's a precedence for sure. And just like we were talking about with the Athletic, I mean, a lot of these people at the top, they're just in it to make money for themselves.
Sure.
And that goes the same for sports owners too. There's not a lot of altruistic owners out there. I always felt like Paul Allen was one of those who was like about as altruistic to the fan base as you can be.
Yeah, he like wanted to win as much as the fan base wanted to win.
Right. It seems like Mark Cuban is one of those guys, but you don't hear about most owners out there because they're not altruistic. They're
a lot of those guys
behind the scenes counting their money.
A lot of times the guy, Mark Cuban's a good example of that. Paul Allen's a good example of that. There's bad examples of that where the guy turns into a nut and gets too involved in the team, like Jerry Jones, Al Davis.
Right.
These guys even George Steinbrenner to a large degree, even though he did have good years with the Yankees, like when his spoon was stirring the pot, it was a lot worse than when he allowed like a true baseball guy to run shit. And yeah, I don't know. It's tough, but also I'm like, I guess I'm just jaded and I think that's even for sure the case. I'm just jaded by the Sonics moving, where I'm like, what your guys are going through sucks, but it's not as bad because we're also 15 years removed from it,
One thing I will say before we get off this topic that does kind of annoy me is that anytime the possibility of a team relocating pops up, you always see Sonics fans say, we got to support this because of what happened to us.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that way necessarily. I mean,
That's basically what I mean.
Yeah, I feel sympathy for you because I know how bad I feel empathy for you because I've been through this situation and it's terrible. But it's also an unfortunate reality of how this business is being run. And for us to be like, we got to support every team that comes along that suffers a similar fate as the Sonics, it's like, well, first of all of these, even though the end result might be the same, a team moves, the situations themselves are much different. They're all different. So to just like blindly throw your support at these things without understanding the situations is tough.
Yeah, like why can't the people of Utah have a team? Like why do they not deserve a team when the people of Oakland can't drive across the bridge? You know what I mean? Like it's
no, I know it's really difficult, man. And like one thing that like
by the way, that was a tough example because there's another component to this, which is like the Raiders moved out of Oakland also. And there's a tough reality, which is that Oakland is demographically very different from San Francisco. And that sucks. Like, that sucks that baseball already has like the players are a lower percentage black just about every year. And to take a team out of what we would call without, like, I mean, there's inner city areas that we don't call inner city. We don't really call, like, downtown San Francisco an inner city area. That has a different meaning when we talk about it, but to take it out of a traditionally black city, take baseball out of that city, that does suck. I would like to acknowledge that, especially when I said take it to Utah. The Mormons don't deserve it more than Oakland, okay? That's not what I'm saying.
That was their other option, was either Vegas or Utah, so it could have. It still might end up that way. We don't even know, man. Like
Sure.
this is far from over at this point. All right, we gotta talk about some other subjects.
We got some levity coming, folks. I might just have to. I'm gonna start chaptering these on YouTube so that you could skip forward to some laughs if you need to.
Can we just quickly acknowledge that two teams won championships without talking about it? Because I don't think anyone cares. The Nuggets win the NBA championship. Yes. The Golden Knights win the NHL championship. Congrats to you guys, first timers. It is nice to see two first timers win, but beyond that, who cares?
Yeah, it is. What I like about this podcast and about sports podcasts with a comedy bent to them is like analyzing a championship is so boring to me.
It's really boring. Yeah, they were really fucking good all year.
Yeah, they were good. Oh, Nikola Jokic, the guy that's like the best player in basketball now. Oh, he won Finals MVP and deserved it probably. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess let's fucking talk about that for 45 minutes.
Okay, I think we can these next two topics, I think they combine into one very nicely because in both situations, someone gets knocked down.
All right, so we're going to start with, and this is funny because this story came to me originally as, I'm going to switch to my, I guess we'll do it. This is from the Road Hacks Golf account, by the way, so check that out, Road Hacks Golf. So I heard about this originally because the guy, and I'm just going to play it in the background. There's a guy I couldn't find like a clean version of this video. So there was the guy,
it's a funny video. Yeah.
So the Canadian Open ends on like a 72, like a fourth playoff hole, 72-foot putt.
And then Nick Taylor, former University of Washington Husky.
Hey, I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Yeah, Nick Taylor wins it. Yep.
So that's like an amazing, like if you watch the putt, it's amazing. But then like 45 minutes later, I get this notification to my phone and it's this story that Adam Hadwin had been tackled by a security guard while trying to celebrate, which is this a common thing in professional golf for like guys who didn't win the tournament? Because you're not on teams unless you're a live golfer, right?
Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know. I haven't stuck around for a lot of like post-round ceremonies, but I think this was just such an epic victory. Nick Taylor, he's not like a big name golfer. He's younger. This is a big win for him, winning the Canadian Open, and then to do it in such dramatic fashion. There's heightened emotion for this sort of thing. And his buddy just wants to come out there. His buddy, who's also a professional golfer, comes running out onto the green during the ceremony with a bottle of champagne, shaking it up and spraying it everywhere. And this security guard must have seen weapon or something. Yeah. I don't know. He thought this Hadman was coming out there to cause harm, and he just comes running around everybody and throws him to the ground. It is a great tackle. There's another video I saw that was either being shot by Hadwin, or it had to be by Hadwin because I don't think anyone's around him. But when you see the security guard running directly at the camera, he looks like a defensive end, man, because he first of all, there's a crowd in front of him. He quickly swim moves around the entire crowd. So he gets around a bunch of people, and then he just launches himself at this. If you're a security guard, this is like the dream come true.
He wrapped and drove. That was like the form on the tackle itself is great.
It's a penalty in the NFL. It'd be a body weight tackle on the quarterback. If it was on the quarterback, he drove his body weight into the ground. And did you see that Hadwin is now injured because of this?
Is he? What is his injury?
He dislocated his shoulder as a result of this tackle.
Oh my God. I feel like this has potential to be like, was that guy's name Orlando Brown, the referee?
Hit by the flag. Yeah.
Yeah. That where it's like this could be a career altering injury, and they're, well, the other funny thing about this to me is because you think of professional sports and you think of the stars. I don't think the Canadian Open is packed with stars. I don't think
no.
I know there's like PGA Canada, and it's like most of these other like outlying PGA tours, these other like foreign country tours operate as like a minor leagues. So what happened here is the security guard didn't recognize him. So like this isn't like this is like if not if Gary Payton came onto the court to celebrate. This would be like if Steve Scheffler came on but Steve Scheffler's probably too tall. It's got to be someone who's like not obviously playing that sport.
Golfers in general are very nondescript. In most other sports, athletes kind of stand out. In basketball, it's easy to tell this guy's super tall. Okay, he's a basketball player. Football, this dude's jacked up. He's probably a football player, right? In golf, they just look like every other dude. So, and no one knows what Adam Hadwin looks like, unless you're like the most hardcore golfer out there. So all these dudes saw was a guy running at everybody frantically, spraying something, shooting something, and he did what he was trained to do. He threw him to the ground. And like I said, it's the dream come true if you're a security guard. You're like, you're telling me I get to take somebody out today? It just so happened he picked the wrong guy. It's on everybody else for not like giving him like, usually you see people have like a lanyard or something that signifies access that they can be here. Like you had to give him something, put like a little flag on him or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it's a little bit. It's kind of even more dream come true than when there's like a streaker, because the problem with a streaker is it's a naked person you have to tackle. They are a person who's going to just crumble under a hit almost always. I've never seen a streaker get tackled and not just absolutely crumble, but this is like a guy who has his clothes on. This is the ultimate dream.
Yeah, I mean, like a streaker, somebody on the field, there's two parts that are exciting for anyone watching it. First, obviously, the moment they decide they're going to run onto the playing surface, very exciting.
Yes.
While they're looting everybody, very exciting. But, of course, we're all waiting for the same thing. Even though this person is our hero right now, in just a few seconds, the other side will be our heroes. When they tackle this man and hurt him so badly on the tackle, hopefully, because he gets what's coming to him.
Yeah.
These are they're spectator sports, really. Back in the day when I used to work retail, I worked in a place where I was right by the exit, and this was a big department store. So I'm right by the exit, and like plenty of times I'd seen people walk out this door stealing, often with loss prevention tailing them. And I always thought my dream would have been if loss prevention shouted at me to stop them, which they never would do because they're solely responsible for taking down any criminals in this situation.
Sure.
But I just hope like, hey, maybe there would come a day where I'd be standing there and I'd see someone running towards this exit and they'd say, Alex, get him. And I was going to give this guy everything. Yeah. I don't care. I was going to throw all my body weight into this person. If I missed, I missed. If I screwed it up, I screwed it up. But I was going to give it 100%. That's the dream come true, man. That's all you want to do.
If you're a streaker, I think the only option is to die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. But you might also become the villain while you die. Like, there's no such thing as dying. You can't be a streaker for very long is the problem.
I've never seen anyone escape. Even though they often seem to have a plan and like they're going to like run up through the crowd or something, I've never seen it actually happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the thing is everyone knows they're going to get caught. I've never had that like level of nihilism that I could completely like divorce myself from the consequences. Nor have I ever had a body that I felt deserved to streak. You know what I mean? Like even in my best shape, I was like, no one needs to see my like. I can't imagine my penis would be in an impressive state when it's in front of 55,000 fans. You know what I mean?
It's a cold night. Could be tough. All right. And then we got to talk about the other one.
Combat sports, baby, in non-traditional combat sports settings. Hold on. I'll pull it up.
This is a product of the NBA Finals. Really, if you're like me and don't care about the NBA Finals, this is the highlight of the NBA Finals.
Are you probably aren't catching audio off this, are you?
I am. Yeah, I heard.
Okay, hold on. I got to make it go through my headphones at least because it was going through. All right, here we go.
Not that audio on this is necessarily important. If you haven't seen the video, you got to go out and watch Conor McGregor destroy the Miami Heat mascot.
Yeah.
I don't even know what their mascot is. It's just the Heat.
So I'm going to try to start this over. Oh, here we go. Let's get this.
Title yourself, baby. Hey, get ready out. Give the title on. Put the title on. You'll be okay. Here goes Murray. Conor, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So first punch.
You can't often tell that a person in a mascot costume is injured, but you can tell this time because Conor, they're doing some stupid stunt with this. Like they want to involve Conor McGregor because he's there and the mascot's, going to play like some prank on Conor McGregor. And then he's going to knock the mascot down with the punch, except he is a trained professional fighter, so asking him to throw a punch is not a good idea in any capacity.
Perilous.
And he gives it his all. I mean, he throws 2 punches with 100% of his force. Like he was supposed to make $1 billion off knocking this guy out.
Yeah.
And this poor guy, he gets sent to the hospital.
Yeah, so that's obviously that's our my question is, I have a couple questions. One, it's obvious that it's the concussion occurs, I think, on the fall, which is what they always say about like football helmets don't stop concussions. Neither do mascot heads, apparently.
I mean, yeah, if you square this guy up in the mascot head, obviously, if you're Conor McGregor, you're probably thinking, okay, this big old mascot head is going to like cushion any blow I deliver to it.
Yeah.
But you also should know where to punch on a mascot head. Like, generally, like usually the person's face is like at the mascot's mouth level, right?
Yeah.
And that's like exactly where he punched him. It's like he was given this opportunity to knock somebody out in public, and he decided, I'm going to take it.
I haven't had enough of that in my career yet. I need to do it to a non-fighter.
Yeah, and so he did it. And then the second punch seemed unnecessary. The mascot's laying on the ground, clearly like dazed from this hit. And McGregor walks over to it and just delivers another punch right to the face for no reason.
I have to pee really quick, okay? Can you find something to talk about for a couple minutes so I don't have to edit?
We can talk about your tiny bladder. No, we can edit. Can't you? Okay, yeah.
I peed remarkably fast.
That was very quick. Are you done?
I know.
Already?
I can't even. I wish that I could. I wish that without violating YouTube rules, I could have brought the webcam in and shown the just absolute power behind the pressure washing I just gave the bottom of the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah. At least you only have to edit out like a minute.
Yeah.
That was very easy. All right. We got to play the home run game.
Is that our last time? It is.
That's our last
Holy
topic.
shit!
We're going to try to keep this at a reasonable time today.
Wow.
For everybody.
If I hadn't peed, we'd be maybe under 90 minutes. The dream.
It's possible.
Oh wait, no, we have one more topic. We have our local topic. That's Oh wait, did I not put it in? Fuck me in the ass. Okay, I'm going to show you the last thing I wanted to talk about is the ESPN put out a ranking of the core players, and I hope that I'm not going to get in trouble for including this. I mean, I can't imagine enough people are going to watch this that I'll be in trouble, but I'm going to just share the actual article. So this is the rankings of core players for all the franchises. And have you seen this article yet?
All the NFL franchises. No, I have not.
So if you were going to guess, where would you guess the Seattle Seahawks are ranked on this list?
Bottom half for sure. I would have to think. I would say maybe right around like 15. Mid-teens.
This guy just can't guess wrong. That's the thing. 14. They are 14.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So these are...
They're good at other positions besides quarterback. That's why.
Sorry, it wasn't. It was core, not quarterback.
No, I get it. That's what I'm saying. Like, but I would have to imagine that an article like this, the most important part of any team's core would be like the ones that have the best quarterbacks. Which it seems, as you're scrolling through this, that is exactly the case. Yeah. It's just the Seahawks happen to be, they have very good young players at tailback, at on the line. Their line is actually pretty good now, at least on the two ends.
I don't think they're counting, by the way. I don't think they're counting the tailbacks. By the way, what is it, 1973? What are you talking about, tailbacks?
And then their receivers are obviously, they got DK, they got Tyler Lockett, they got the best receiver in this year's draft. So, yeah, they got a pretty good core.
Yeah, so this is and they don't even have, by the way, Jackson. I'm gonna struggle with the name, and I can't. I'm not articulate enough right now to trust myself going through that name. They don't even have him included on this. Yeah, so 14th. I agree. There's probably a big penalty put on Geno Smith on here. I'm going through. I'd like to just go through these real quickly with you and see if there's a quarterback on the list ahead of the Seahawks that you would not take.
I can already see one who's got a worse core, and it's the one right ahead of the Seahawks, the Vikings.
So
they just cut their best running back. They cut Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, so they're
Kirk
obviously
Cousins is
not.
terrible.
They're not respecting the tailback position. God, are you fucking Bear Bryant? What a
look at the roster. Look at the roster core for the Vikings that they call out. You got Kirk Cousins, who's bad and costs way more money than Geno Smith.
He is expensive, but I bet he's not as bad as you think.
He's bad. He's not that good. They call out a linebacker.
Would you take Trevor Lawrence over?
Yes.
Over Geno Smith. Okay. Without the massage allegations, Deshaun Watson.
I don't know if I would take Deshaun Watson.
You're crazy.
No, not solely based on the cost. He's way too expensive.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
The thing about Geno is he doesn't.
He's cost controlled. You're right.
Yeah, and so you can decide next year if you want to spend a high draft pick on a quarterback. You can absolutely afford to do that.
So I think if you're taking cost out of it, I think that every quarterback on this list, except for arguably Kirk Cousins, I would say I'd probably if they cost the same, I would probably take Kirk Cousins. The one question, so the one caveat to this is that the 49ers do not have a quarterback on their core, which makes sense. I mean, they're kind of stuck in this limbo with Brock Purdy coming back from injury and Trey Lance coming back from injury and probably, somewhat, reasonably disgruntled. They have some limbo there. I think that it seems to me like everybody above the Seahawks except for the 49ers, I would take their quarterback if cost was the same.
I don't know if I'd take Tua.
Yeah, Tua's tough.
It's funny that the Dolphins are ranked 4th when their quarterback might not even be able to continue playing in the NFL beyond his next big hit, right?
I know, that's true.
So it's like they do have good receivers. They do have a good cornerback in Jalen Ramsey, and they have an offensive tackle, but they might not have a quarterback next year.
It's true. That's a good point. And that to have them ranked that high with that big of a question mark, I do agree. But yeah, above that, it seems like it's still a quarterback driven league is the point. I think we kind of have started to. I think Seattle is fooling themselves into thinking you can be like a running game and defense team, and it's just like that's such a short spurt where you can be that hopefully but also they don't need. I mean, I think that realistically, probably, I don't know. I guess I don't know when Pete Carroll's going to retire because I would have assumed it would have happened by now. So,
dude, he's going to live forever. It's like I don't know if you ever watched Parks and Rec, but.
I didn't because I watched it.
Okay.
I tried to watch it. I'm gonna give you my brief Parks and Rec. I tried to watch it right after watching The Office, and it's just such a toothless version of The Office. At least season 1 is.
The first 2 seasons of Parks and Rec are god awful. Okay. I would recommend anybody, if you were going to start watching the show, just start at season 3, because in season 3 they introduced 2 new characters. One is played by Adam Scott, who's a pretty good actor, and one's played by Rob Lowe, who everybody knows. And Rob Lowe's character, his name is Chris Traeger, and he has this quote. He's just like this hyper positive human being in the show. And he has a quote about scientists believe that the first person to live to 150 years old has already been born, and I believe that person is me. That's Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
Every time I see that quote, I'm like, that is Pete Carroll. He might live to be 150.
What do you think the odds are? And factor in your best knowledge of the actuarial tables of a man of Pete Carroll's age, but that he becomes the oldest coach to ever coach in the NFL. Like when he retires, because is Belichick older than him, or is he older than Belichick?
I think Pete's the oldest because he's about to be 72. Let's see, how old is Belichick? I don't think he's. Is he that old? No, Belichick's the same age. He's also 71. Okay, so they're
April
very close.
16th. Pete Carroll.
Belichick just looks like he could drop dead at any moment, though. I mean, that's the thing about Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is like so full of life. I've never seen a more energetic 72-year-old.
I think that Belichick is older.
Okay. Yeah, I still think Pete would outlast him. I mean, just look at their body types. Bill Belichick's.
No, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I had the wrong year. My bad. Okay.
Either way, Belichick still looks like he enjoys, a sandwich every now and then, and sure. Pete looks like he enjoys running 3 miles every day.
So you think? Who do you think will coach? So 2 things. You think Pete will retire as the oldest coach in the history of the NFL?
I think it's very possible. Yeah, unless he just chooses to walk away on his own accord. But there's always like every now and then you find those guys that just stick around even when they shouldn't. I don't know if that's going to be Pete. I think Pete is perfectly capable of still coaching for a few more years if he wants to.
And then the other question is, do you think at that time Bill Belichick will have retired, or will he shortly thereafter overtake Pete Carroll as the oldest coach in the history of the NFL?
Man, that's tough. I think Pete will outlast Belichick, so he will be the oldest by default, since we now learned he's slightly older.
Yeah, he's 8 months older or something like that.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, home run game. I'm going to let you go first because I need to think of a person.
Okay, I've got a good one here. We mentioned this person last week when we were doing the home run game, and I was hopeful that you hadn't gone and looked this person up for any reason recently, which you may have. And if you have, I would hope you would nobly tell me that you did that and respect the game. But last week I gave you Paul Sorrento, and then we briefly mentioned that he replaced Tino Martinez at first base for the Mariners. So this week I was like, who's better than Tino Martinez to give you?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. Tino had a pretty good career. He ends up playing 16 years in the major leagues. Obviously, he starts his career with the Mariners, plays with the Mariners through 95, goes to the Yankees through 2001, and then he kind of goes on a little adventure in the last 4 seasons of his career. He plays 2 years in St. Louis, plays a season in Tampa, and then his final season, 2005, he actually goes back to the Yankees. So he played a very long time. He was a very productive player. Actually makes a couple all-star teams. You have mentioned in the past the Hall of Very Good. I think Tino would be a first ballot Hall of Very Gooder.
Yeah.
Mostly because of the Yankees affiliation, and for being honest, those guys are always, they get an inflated value just by being part of that franchise. But
sure. He also put up some great offensive numbers in Seattle, which were probably also aided by the franchise as opposed to his like God-given talent. That was like the he was in Seattle the years where the Kingdom and the lineup just allowed for incredible offensive production.
Yeah.
Because he was in Seattle through 96, is that right?
He was through 95.
Through 95, okay, and then left.
You know, that's still, yeah, he doesn't really play with Alex Rodriguez much, but obviously there's Griffey, Edgar, Buhner. You know, that heart of the lineup was strong. And
how many years did you say he played?
He plays a total of 16 years in the major leagues.
And what's his debut year?
His debut year is 1990 with the Mariners, and then his final year is 2005 with the Yankees.
So I'm going to give you the Alex method. I think he's probably, you know, a couple years at the beginning he was a little less, a couple years at the blah, blah, blah. 30-ish home runs. I had him as a 30-ish home run guy. I think he maybe had 1 year where he like really cranked it up for a year, but not. I don't remember him ever being a 50 guy. I don't think he ever had a 50 home run year. I suspect that if he had a 40 home run year, it was 1. So I'm going to put Tino Martinez at 325 home runs.
325 is very close.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'm always worried when I say it that I'm like, I regret it immediately.
I kind of thought if you went through the process correctly with this one, you would be close, because I think Tino's expected home runs are right about where you would think if you kind of pegged the number right as far as what you thought his average season was. He had 339 home runs. So you're only, Price is Right rules. You are in great shape. You're under by 14.
I'm winning Tino Martinez and headed to the Showcase Showdown.
Yes, absolutely. It's you were more or less correct. He averages his 162 game average on home runs is 27. So that's pretty close to the 30 that you pegged. Yeah. You were right. He did. It's funny because when we were looking at Paul Sorrento last week, 1997 with the Mariners was his most productive season. And it just so happened that 1997 was Tino Martinez's most productive season as well. Yeah, he had 44 home runs that year. His OPS in 97 is 948, which is also a high figure for him. So in his career, OPS was 815, very good.
Well, and that's also in old Yankee Stadium, which is like a different situation than now.
Yeah. So, I mean, even like with the Mariners, so the 2 years he makes the All-Star team, 95 with the Mariners and 97 with the Yankees. In 95 with the Mariners, he has 31 home runs. He has an OPS of 920. So that's basically it's his second best season after that 97 season. But just a really productive first baseman. The interesting thing about Tino is his first 2 years with the Mariners, 90 and 91, he didn't play a whole lot. 92, he becomes a full-time player. 93 and 94, his play tapers off a little bit. I think he might have had some injuries in there. But at the end of his career, like his last season with the Yankees, he still plays 131 games. So unlike most of these guys, the only thing I thought might hurt you would be at the end of the career, he doesn't taper off the way that some of the other guys do. So he's still pretty productive towards the end. He even had 17 home runs in that last season. So it's not like the production fell off that much.
Yeah, I think his deal was, I think he was just like maybe the most consistent guy we've, like the valleys are high and the peaks are low. You know?
Yeah. No, he was. I mean, I remember when we basically lost him after the 95 season, it felt like the Mariners were making a big mistake. He was 27 in 1995, so he's basically entering his prime at that point. Sure. His numbers with the Yankees seem to indicate that. And obviously he became a much more notable Yankee than a Mariner, I'm sure.
Yeah. And if he plays in a different era, 300 home runs is enough to get him into the Hall of Fame. And if he doesn't, which he didn't, he plays in a very, high productivity offensive era. He's Hall of Very Good. I think that's a good
Very Good.
First I wish someone didn't own the Hall of Very Good name, because it's a perfect name for this kind of thing where it's like I would love to talk about Tino Martinez for 7 hours, but unfortunately I think my wife would leave me if I did that. Okay, I got a name for you. It's another one of these names. My move is either former Mariners or guys who feel like they spiritually were Mariners at some point, even though they weren't. Guys that I just remember in trade conversations all the time. Guys that I maybe wanted to be Mariners but never were. Guys that feel like they could have played for like a high school in Seattle or something like that. This guy does feel that way to me. On the surface, he's none of these things. In fact, he played most of his career with the Philadelphia Phillies. 12 seasons. Can you guess the person I'm talking about based on that information?
12 seasons with the Phillies?
Kind of felt like he was always on the verge of being traded. Spiritually is like a Mariners
position did he play? Can
outfielder.
I get a position?
I mean, that narrows it down quite a bit, but it's he's an
outfielder for the Phillies for 12 years. Oh,
no, he didn't play for the Phillies for 12 years. He played 12 seasons, and most of them.
Notably was it Matt Stairs?
No, it's Pat Burrell, but I feel like Matt Stairs is another guy that probably should have been a Mariner at some point.
Pat Burrell was a huge prospect, and he actually he ended up having a pretty good career, but I just remember the hype around him before he even made the major leagues was huge.
Yeah, it seems like all those guys now, outside of I think Bryce Harper has lived up to it, but like Steven Strasburg obviously had his struggles with injuries. Like Jason Hayward is a guy who, like, this is the next Griffey. This is the guy. And
Burrell, I think he might have been a really good college player.
Sure.
And then on top of that, he's just like the prototype. He's big. He's a big dude. He looks like he should be one of the best players in baseball. And for a short time, he was. I mean, he was about as good as he got in that Phillies lineup. So you said he ended up playing 12 seasons total?
12 seasons. And I'm interested to find out. I'm going to pull up his minor league stats also. He played almost exclusively left field. And a guy like him with that prospect status, you usually expect those guys to at least play some center field at some point, because he's like he's big but also athletic.
Yeah.
Number 2 prospect going into the year 2000.
Yeah, that was before left field got such a bad rap.
Yeah, true.
Once Moneyball came about and we started really getting into advanced statistics, people were like, "Oh, you can pretty much put anybody out there and they'll survive." Yeah,
so he didn't. This isn't a surprise, but he doesn't spend a lot of time in the minor leagues and plays in the minors. He plays actually more first base than outfield, but I think that's probably if I was guessing, I'd get a lot of that's early in his career. That's surprising. Anyway, not exclusively a left fielder, but never a center fielder.
Yeah, Pat Burrell, I would say he probably was close to 25 to 30 home runs on average. I would think. I think he more or less played till the end. Like he wasn't one of those guys. I think being that he only played 12 years, he probably had some injuries in there, but I don't recall him like really tapering off at the end. So he was probably close to playing full seasons all the way through. And if he was getting, let's say he got 30 a year at 12 years, probably more like 11 years. So that'd be like just over 300. But I don't know that he got over 300. I'm going to say he got 260 home runs.
Okay, you were so close at the beginning. Yeah, you kept circling around it. I was going to be very upset if you fucking stuck it. 292 home runs. When you started to say 300, but I don't think he quite got to 300, I was like, if you put the exact number on this, I'm going to be so pissed. Yeah. Or even like within the 10. You said 260?
Yeah, I was hedging it too much. I
think like you still made a little bit of the calculation of the end of career fall off, which he did have, by the way, in his last 2 seasons, a combined 27 home runs.
Okay, yeah, not that many. I just kind of I feel like he got hurt a lot. Maybe he didn't.
That's why
I was hedging it. It was because of the injuries. I assumed there was more injuries than there were.
So he comes up in 2000, which isn't it insane to imagine that Pat Burrell came up in 2000? 2000 seems so recent for guys of our age. And he comes up in 2000 and has an entire Major League Baseball career and has been retired for 12 years since the year 2000. He played like a partial season then, but probably just because he came up late would be my guess. And then he actually plays, 146 games is his lowest until he played 127 in 2004.
Yeah, I'm looking at him now. Yeah, he basically played full.
Oh, you froze. You froze.
Two things working against him. Either he wasn't living up to the hype, or he was just, something was going wrong here. Injuries, where he just wasn't the guy that we thought he would be.
Sure. I don't know what the crowd is going to see. You froze on my end for a moment, but so he's fourth in the Rookie of the Year voting, 2 times received MVP votes, but yeah, never. I think you were saying he never lived up to his potential, but he played on some of those great Phillies teams with I think Shane Victorino was on most of those teams. Roy Halladay was probably on some of those teams. Ryan Howard. I did see a thing the other day. Ryan Howard still holds records for the fastest to 100 and 200 and 300 home runs, I believe.
Wow. Yeah, I believe it. He was a really good hitter. That's a guy that now we can't use him.
Oh, we can't use Ryan Howard?
I guess we could. I'm going to look him up right now. So, yeah, we can't.
You're taking him off the list.
He's off the table. He had to be close to a 500 home run. Nah, not really. 382, less than I would have thought. Lower career WAR than Pat Burrell, as it turns out.
Yeah, they don't like first baseman very much. I'd say
that's true. That's true. Defensively, he's a liability.
Yeah, or at least isn't providing a ton of value. But so Pat Burrell wins 2 World Series, one with the Phillies, and then one in his second to last year of baseball with the San Francisco Giants, the aforementioned World Series winning San Francisco Giants, taking fans away from the Oakland Athletics. Pat Burrell directly responsible for ruining baseball in Oakland.
He was really productive with the Giants too, because he comes over. It looks like he comes over mid-season from Tampa, where he wasn't doing a whole lot, and then he gets to San Francisco and puts up an 872 OPS in 96 games. Though that's pretty good for a guy at that point in his career.
Yeah, 18 home runs in a pitcher's park, a right-handed hitter in a pitcher's park that's really tough on everybody, but I think was particularly tough on righties. Pat Burrell, legit, very good baseball player. Another Hall of Very Good guy.
He must have got injured at the. Oh yeah, he gets injured at the end. He retires due to a chronic injury. Because I was like, he retires his last season. He's only 34 years old, which for the productivity he had seems young. But he had a chronic foot injury.
Gotcha.
So, sorry about that, Pat.
Do you think he got it barbecuing?
He cooked it in a George Foreman grill like Michael Scott.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good show.